This is our story about how we prototyped the most difficult and epic D&D game for you to enjoy and maybe play.
This is the first episode, guys.
Beginning. All right.
Let's make it fun.
I intended the lore for this game to be pirates, dabbling in the celestial side of D&D, magic and monsters and creatures. You don't see a lot of campaigns or games built around celestials, mainly because of the good guys, right? The backstory. Mount Celestia was under attack by demons. A huge army was showing up. They were holding them off wave by wave. And then a legendary warlock pulled up on the demon side, cast a 10th level spell, teleporting and warping the Temple of Valor away from Mount Celestia. Mount Celestia suffered a great defeat that day. But the temple was flying through limbo for maybe a decade, but then eventually found its home in the material plane, specifically on an island called Grenske. Now, Grenske has a history of its own, but what was there was a community of air genasi and water genasi called the Agamate living peacefully. That was until a dragon showed up. A dragon named Diatooth, claiming the island as her own and claiming the relic as her own. The Agamate were forced to abandon their home, and all of a sudden an army of kobolds and Diatooth were the main inhabitants of Grenske. Through chance, through luck, through fate, whatever it may be, they met with the Dragon Slayer Corp, who are professional dragon slayers. And being who they are, they accepted to slay Diatooth. Now, Diatooth is a bit vain. She believes herself to be a god. She wants the relic to give her godhood. She experimented with the relic, trying to use its divine magics for evil and her own sort of personal gain. But it wasn't until the Dragon Slayer Corp pulled up with a master plan, essentially paying a dragon turtle to attack the island to cause a distraction, letting the Diatooth come out and fight. By the time the dragon turtle left and Diatooth returned to her lair, the ambush was sprung, slaying the dragon. They were victorious, but all but one Dragon Slayer died that day. He managed to escape the kobolds with not a cent of gold. He didn't get a cent of the hoard that was there, or the relic. But he made it back to mainland, and quickly word spread that the dragon was dead, and there was a dragon hoard up for grabs in the middle of the sea. Now, clearly, every pirate, crook, gangster listens to this and hears money. And this is where the Pirate King steps in, suggesting that they form the Royal Sail Company, an alliance between all the pirate crews to work together to fight through all the kobolds and then split up the gold evenly. Knowing pirates, it's going to be full chaos as soon as they get on the island. What will happen? It's up to the players to find out.
Hello everyone, my name is Garrett Allardyce and I am the audio lead, technical supervisor, and editor for the Celestial Dungeon. As someone who is relatively new to this fantasy role-playing community, I was so excited to see what this experience was all about. And as an audio guy, I knew exactly how I could help. So let's talk about some of the tech and the audio process. To get the best sound we possibly could for everyone and everything, we used 4 ECM44B wired lavalier mics for the players, which connected to a Zoom H6 audio recorder, as well as a shotgun boom mic placed over the table for table sounds and just general backup audio. We tried using wireless lav mics for a series of cast interviews we conducted prior to game day, and while there wasn't a problem with them, we knew wired lavs would be way easier to set up and could pick up a wider range of gain. Of course though, technology often has a habit of deciding not to work at inconvenient times, making the technical round trip a bit difficult to complete. But after enough test runs and double checks, we were confident enough in the audio equipment to do it for real. Game day was fun. Thankfully, we didn't run into any immediate issues with the mics, and the wires were more than long enough to connect the recorder underneath the table. However, this is when I had to face a harsh reality. If the audio recorder was showing levels from underneath the table and I was supposed to be monitoring them the whole time, well... Would it be better if I do that?
Table, but like that's your commitment, yeah.
I'm fine to do that.
Okay, yeah, to do it.
Okay. Yep, nearly 3 hours just chilling under a table. Not my finest moment as an audio student, but sometimes sacrifices must be made. While I was there, I decided to do the responsible thing and test levels, basically asking the cast to make me go deaf over and over.
Yes, I can be louder. I don't see myself really getting up here, but if I need to, you know, that's where it's gonna come from.
The hardest part, though, was simply trying not to laugh whenever something weird or funny happened during the game, which was quite often.
I'm gonna pull my sopping wet book from my belt.
Wait, no, you pressed.
Oh yeah.
prestidigitated
Okay, well it's still messed up.
Like the ink is kind of like run down the page, and like the pages are wrinkly.
But once the game was well underway, we got through it no problem. So what about all the other audio? There were a lot of sound effects gathered for this production, and I mean a lot. The search definitely started out kinda aimless as the game hadn't happened yet, and I was trying to get somewhat of a head start by sourcing tons of fantasy, pirate story sounds, and ambience tracks that I thought could be useful. After the game was finished, however, I got a lot more guidance regarding which effects to look for and integrate into the story, some of which were definitely harder to find than others. Nearly all of the sound effects came from either the WeStar library or from an online royalty-free fantasy bundle, along with a bit of Foley dice rolling, just in case. Here's just some of what we collected. Pretty cool, right? As for music, along with royalty-free tracks, we got some amazing performances from incredibly talented people. In fact, every song that you hear in the background of this video is a piece for the Celestial Dungeon. Big thanks to our musicians, you did one hell of a job. So now, time to reflect on the whole thing. I think I'll start by saying that this was not super difficult audio recording, especially since we were in a singular, well-controlled environment that didn't have much in the way of unpredictability, which I definitely appreciated. That being said, as someone who has primarily focused on audio production from home or in audio-based studios, this was my first time dealing with some of the equipment, such as the lav mics. In retrospect, it was a really good thing that we rented them out 4 times before game day, because otherwise who knows what kinds of unforeseen issues could have popped up just hours before the game. Wired lavs were also the right decision given their better quality. If anything, we could have just gotten a few more extension cords, but I think it would have helped to also coordinate better with the wardrobe department to confirm it wouldn't cause any problems with the sound. Haley's costume proved to be a bit of a muffler at times, but thankfully the lav mics were omnidirectional and we got enough of her voice from the other ones. As for the post-production audio, I think it really boils down to having better preparation and organization before throwing yourself into it. Doing this again, I would definitely create a much more formal and extensive list regarding what sounds to look for and start the process as early as possible. That way I would have very few issues regarding last-minute finds, and it would give me much more time to put my own spin on the audio should that be beneficial. While some of that could certainly be chalked up to the fact that we recorded the game a lot later than expected, which set a lot more back than just audio, better organization and initiative could definitely have resulted in more music production, which could have been done at any point during the process. So as an audio recordist and producer, I think the biggest things I know for next time are to double, triple, quadruple check everything. There's no harm in making sure we're doing everything right, but also to make sure that as many things as possible are accounted for from the very beginning. There's nothing worse than running out of time for something important, and I'll be sure to stay more on top of my game going forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Darian Schumacher, and I am the production designer and website and social media manager for the Celestial Dungeon. It was very exciting to work on this project, and especially because it's fantasy related, and I've always loved fantasy. I remember being a little kid and going to Renaissance festivals back in Michigan where I grew up, and the Michigan Renaissance Festival is actually where I sourced several of the costumes. Nell's bodice is from a leather worker called the Crimson Chain, and they're based out of Texas. And the bodice that I wore is also from there. Taiho's costume I actually made myself out of a thrifted blackout curtain. I'm not sure if Thomas knows this, but this was a good opportunity to learn the ropes a little bit about what it takes to design costumes for characters and try to capture a character's personality in their clothing. And I thought that that was really important while designing the costumes for each of our players. Our backdrops for the Celestial Dungeon, our initial shoot, were actually big set walls that you would see in a theater production or a play of something of that sort. And on top of those were 3 massive canvas drop cloths. And those, Thomas and myself actually dyed by hand ourselves using just your, store-bought RIT liquid dye. And the rest of the props on the set were actually just things that I have kind of laying around. As I've said, I love fantasy, so I have a bunch of tapestries in here, and you can see those in the backdrops of the shots. I sourced all of the little dragon figurines and things like that. I think the centerpiece of the set wasn't the table that we were playing on. Of course, that's very important as well. But behind the players, there's a little sort of captain's table. That was what I had envisioned. So the set was kind of meant to be a tent of some sort. Like, I imagine it was a tent on Grenske Island, but it being a tent means that it could be anywhere. So I wanted to have this space that we were playing the game in be kind of enclosed, so that it left that up to the player's imagination. Like, where is this taking place? In terms of sourcing the other props and materials, most of them were thrifted. I love to thrift, so this was not super difficult to do as a job for me, because I'm at the thrift store anyway, so every time I would go, I would have a look in the little knickknacks section and find like, here's a model ship. A good majority of the costume items are either from a Renaissance fair, from Spirit Halloween, because we shot this just after Halloween. When I came in, I actually brought this giant plastic tub just full of clothes, and I brought all the cast together, and I was like, okay, here's all the stuff, take your pick. I designed and upkeep the website entirely on my own. I have a blog going. I've posted things on Instagram. I'm in charge of posting on Twitter. I'm also in charge of managing the arts teams, so that includes our concept artists, our graphics artists. I've handed off some of my duties to people looking for creative practice opportunities. So I've had a lot of really nice help, and that was such a relief to have the amazing and wonderful concept artists that have chosen to help us out.
Okay, so let's talk about how we planned on doing this, because this is a D&D game, but also a production. I was the creative director, technical director, the production manager, and I was also going to run the game. So when we entered production, I was sort of overwhelmed with this idea of like insurmountable work. So I found somebody to play the role as DM. Her name was Rachel, and I sort of trusted her with taking over my game that I wrote to help me figure out my tasks with all the technical, VFX, management, all that. Like, lead me to that. Didn't turn out that way, because a lot of things changed. We had a player drop. Rachel had some change to the lore. I had to eventually step in as a player. There were so many things that changed during this time of production. There was one day where we're supposed to do like a photo shoot, and leading up to that, I had to travel quite a distance to pick up a car, a vehicle, pretty much to move stuff from Darian's place to a studio. In that process, I lost my phone on public transit. I lost my phone, and like a day before, I was responsible for a bunch of people's time. There was another time where we're supposed to shoot like a test game. The studio wasn't fully set up. We needed certain permissions. We needed doors unlocked for us, but they weren't. We were actually supposed to have the game fully done, fully edited, fully visually affected right now. But the quality of the game that we got when we did have everything aligned, it was my call as like the producer. It wasn't up to the quality I was hoping for. I was in denial about if it was good or not. Like, I was saying to myself, oh, this is fine, we'll just get it edited, it's fine. But I was watching it, and there's just It lacked energy, nobody was laughing, and the whole point of having visual effects in a D&D game, I think, is to have epic scenes visualized. You know, explosions, magic, like there's so much you can do with verbal storytelling. But the way it ended up with Rachel being the way she DMs, it was just us standing around talking to the NPCs, and not even that important conversations, I think. It's all our fault. It's all my fault, I think, because it's not really fair to ask Rachel to understand that this needs to be a very visually appealing thing, or that the way she DMs needs to have us imagining epic scenes, because that's what works. That's what we have. That's what we can do here. There are 5 lessons that I think I learned the hard way in this last couple months in this production. The first one is excuses. I heard too many excuses coming from myself and my team. The excuse can be valid, but when we're working on a production like this and we're trying to be serious about getting stuff done, I need to know that the work's not done. And that's all I need to know. And then all we need to figure out from there is what we can do to make it happen. The second thing is organization and changes. I was handing off responsibilities and allowing fundamental changes to happen easily, like letting Rachel become the DM, change the lore, all that. There were expectations I was trying to set and organize, but they didn't work out. There was too many changes. It became chaotic. A way I intend to move forward from that is have a master plan. Be the guy with the plan. And I can't depend on anyone else to do that. I need to keep the bigger picture in mind. The third thing is competing, or mainly competing with ideas from Critical Role and Son of a Dungeon. We were trying to do what they were doing, but better, and we were less trying to figure out ways we could be unique. That, I think, was a mistake because it was keeping us from figuring out our authentic self to this ecosystem online. And yeah, that's something we need to figure out in future endeavors. The fourth thing was initiative. I was very passionate about this project. Whenever I saw work that needed to be done, I took the initiative in doing it. And I was making the assumption that other people in the team would be the same way, see something that needs to be done and do it. But that is clear to me now that that's not the case. I gotta be very clear, very direct, and very succinct about what I expect from crew, cast, and everybody that wants to be on board with this. Fifth thing, knowing my role. Just like I said, I was the producer on this. That's how I see myself. That's how I want to be. It's what I will continue doing. But I was concerning myself with so many of the smaller aspects of this production that I wasn't allowing myself to see the bigger picture. And that, I think, caused me to lose sight of the bigger picture. So in the future, I need to find a way or find a means to maintain that vision, so I don't let something like this happen again. As for the new approach that the Celestial Dungeon will be taking, over my winter break, there are 2 things I will be making. First is a master plan. Essentially everything, all the dates, all the tasks, everything that need to be done will have the final game, final product up to the quality that I want. So I don't have to make a quality call like what I did with the Rachel's game. Second thing is what I'm going to be calling the Celestial Tome, which is essentially the lore and the stats. I want this all to be done within, a month. So when we start production again, we can get it done within a week. So that's what I intend to do. And our new approach would have a less of a focus on the performance being up to par with like Critical Role, 7 or 8 voice actors that have been doing this kind of stuff for years, and have a more grounded take on our skills. I think I have a talent for D&D rules, like all the stats and mechanics that are in the game. I can make that fun. I can make that unique. But yeah, I have not lost faith in this project, and there's one more reflection I have to take. Try and try again. And all this is just prototyping the perfect D&D game. Okay? But look forward to it. I'll be making a success of this. I'll see you there.